If you start working with us, what happens in the first 30 days? In this video, I want to give you a quick overview, like how is it to work with us as your native advertising agency. If you do native ads by yourself, use this video here as a little guideline how it should be in ideal case. Hi everyone, my name is Marcel Sattler. I'm the founder of nativeadvertising.net. We are a platform about native ads. We also share a lot of free content here on YouTube, but we are also one of the largest native advertising agencies. We run traffic for platforms like Taboola, Outbrain, Newsbreak, MJD, Ref Content, and many, many more. And this already very successfully for more than a decade. So therefore, I think I know what I'm speaking about when it comes to native. I burned a lot of money by myself, so don't worry about that I never burned money. I learned native ads the very hard way, because back then when I started with native ads, there were no, and when I mean no, there were really zero updated content about native. So I learned everything by myself. And you can imagine back then the algorithms were not existing. And yeah, you burned during you just catched your coffee, got your coffee, you burned a few $100s just with the wrong bid system. Nowadays it's a bit better, but still there are a few stones on your way when you start with native. Therefore, it's always more important, or it's always the better choice to hire an agency, because with this you will go the fast track without losing a lot of money. That doesn't mean that you don't lose money. You will also lose money if you're working with us, because that's the way of native. I will explain this a bit later in that video. But the amount of money you burn actually is way lower than you do it by yourself. So in the beginning, we ask you, when you start working with us, after we agreed on everything, we send you two links, especially if you're in e-commerce. One link is a general link where we ask you a bit more about your product, a bit your service, a bit your competition and everything, to understand your service or product a bit better. This will take you around 15 minutes. And then additionally to that, we send you a second form, which is especially for an e-commerce tracking setup, where we're going to ask you for some voucher codes and this kind of stuff. So overall, that process will take you around 15 minutes. What happened then is our copywriters are going to start research. So our copywriters, they have a marketing background, but also psychological background. So they know exactly which trigger points they need to catch, or to trigger actually, to make the click convert. Because very important here to understand is we are handling different audiences. Native is not native, so you have a very broad age spectrum here. That means you have people between 35, 40 until 75, 80 plus. And of course, a 40-year-old person, which is very fit, very active, has a different kind of language than a 75-year-old grandma. That's very normal, and that's the case out there. And now what they're going to do is they do a lot of research. Our copywriters do a lot of research to understand better the needs of the audience here. So first thing is a lot of research to understand the language and understand the right words here. Afterwards, they create the different marketing angles and the different pain points basically. And then they're going to create copy, like a normal copywriting process. Then they start to write the things down. Of course, nowadays, for a few things, we also use AI. That's very common, very normal, especially for some spell checks, especially for some A/B variants. But long story short, for the main copy, I would say more than 80%, we still use humans, because and we do a lot of tests about that, but our professional copywriters, our senior copywriters, still outperform any AI text, because it's direct response marketing here. And again, AI is usually unable to catch exactly the right trigger points here, like our professional copywriters does it. So let me explain you what I do in detail. Let's say they have one marketing angle here. Let's say that's the angle 1. And here in this angle 1, they create free advertorials, ADV2, ADV3. And every advertorial has a different topic or a different approach. So this is, for example, more an editorial. That means it's more a newspaper. It's more a newspaper style. That one here is a blog article, like let's say from a POV perspective. So let's say you sell a product and your main audience is a 40-year-old guy. Then this is from the perspective of John, 40 years living in Brisbane, something like that. And he's writing his own blog. And of course, the blog looks more amateur style than the editorial, because the editorial is from a newspaper site actually. And here the blog is from a POV perspective, from a person who bought that product, for example, or who used that service, for example. And the copy is also very different because, this is like from the POV perspective, from the me perspective. The editorial actually is from a neutral third-party perspective. And then the third one, what we like to do is something like a listicle. That's the 10 best XYZ, something like that, And of course, your product is the winning product at the end of the day, but people like to see it like this, the 10 best, the 7 best, something like that. In the past, this was working especially well in Q4, but nowadays it also works pretty well 360 days a year. And that's the structure we are using for angle 1, that's the structure we're using for angle 2, and that's the structure we're using for angle 3. So usually these are the structures, or this is the structure we start with. We have 3 marketing angles, 3 editorials in every angle, and every editorial is different. Afterwards, we send this copy to our client and ask them to review them. So this will take the client approximately 45 minutes. So we ask for feedback if everything is fine, etc. Very important here is for us that we want to explain to the client always why we do that, so that it makes sense for the client, because maybe the client has a different approach, like he wants to go more into product details or so. But we usually don't do that here, because every step here has a certain sense. The advertorial or the main goal of the advertorial is to convert a very cold lead, a very cold audience, to a person who is ready to purchase your product or service. That's very important here. This is the one and only goal of the advertorial. And we know how important here the copywriting process is, because a good advertorial can decide between a very profitable or a very unprofitable campaign. The line here is thin, and on the line is your advertorial. So therefore, if you have an advertorial which sucks, the chances that your whole campaign sucks is very high. But if you have a very well-written advertorial, the chances that this campaign is going to be profitable is also very high. So for this process, we need a couple of days. This is usually done within, I would like to say, let me switch here. This is usually done in 3 to 5 working days. And afterwards, we send it to our client. They usually tell us, hey, everything is fine, go. And then we go to create in parallel of this the tracking setup. And tracking is pretty complicated, because we usually have something which is called cross-domain tracking. Let me explain that. Our domain, so this is like the traffic source. TF is traffic source, like Taboola, Outbrain. From there, we send the traffic to a third-party domain, like mybestnews.com, something like this. So that's a third-party domain. And from this third-party domain, we actually link back in the store, for example, in the Shopify store of our client. Let's say that's the Shopify store, or to a lead form, whatever. But that's the client domain. And here, this process here to track, this is pretty complicated. People are using iPhones. People activated iCloud Private Relay. People are using ad blockers. That's a pretty complicated process. Therefore, it's very important to set up a server-to-server tracking. Everything else, like with pixel tracking, etc., didn't work that well at all. So you will have a lot of KPI differences, which is a pain in the ass. You'd want to avoid that. Therefore, we set up a server-to-server tracking, and this is also complicated to set it up because there is no one-fits-all solution. With a few Shopify themes, this tracking doesn't work, and you need to try out something else, etc. Therefore, we have dedicated developers who are taking care of exactly this all day long. So we implement it, we test it, and then we publish it. This will be in parallel, again, to the other process, also will take around 3 to 5 working days. Then next step is already to create the ads. And here for the ads, we are speaking with the platform. So we are going to reach out to the platforms. We speak with them usually in the beginning already as a first step. But here again, we ping them, we ask them for best practices. And they are usually happy to share the details with us, what's actually working. And we do a little research what the competition is doing and what works out for them pretty well. And then we are going to create different headlines and different copy. And usually we like to create per marketing angles 3 headlines plus 3 images. And if I multiply those together, I have 9 ads per marketing angle. And this is usually what you want. You want 9 ads per marketing angle. And of course, we try to make them very differently. So that means we try to make the images differently, the headlines different in order to test it. So we're going to have, for example, a portrait image of a woman with a background of a city or landscape, and to address the pain in the headline. Then we are going to have something like an illustration for a picture and, for example, a person with the product. And then we let the KPIs speak. Then we check out the KPIs afterwards after everything went live. And then we see, okay, the illustration doesn't work that well, so we turn it off. But what works actually pretty well is the woman with the pain point, like the portrait, the headshot with the pain point. And what we're going to do then is we create kind of lookalikes of this image. Like, okay, now we had an older woman, let's try a bit a younger woman. Now we had a blonde woman, let's try a brunette woman. Now we had a woman, let's try a guy. Now we had a guy, let's try a family. There we create kind of lookalikes. And with this, we develop a better and better and better result. And yeah, the next step is already to set up everything, finish the account tracking. Of course, now I skipped a few parts, by the way. It's way more intense, believe me. It's way more testing involved, but this will be a bit too boring for this video here. So therefore I skip a few parts. But yeah, at the end, we share everything with the client. Client has access to the account, and then we go live. That's the step here. This usually takes 2 to 3 weeks, and then we are live. And now very important here are the first couple of days, because then we check the ads and we check the campaigns, we optimize them, and then we narrow it down. So when we have 3 marketing angles here, like as mentioned here, we are going to see based on the KPIs which one works the best. And we see, for example, okay, angle 2 doesn't work that well, angle 3 is doing okay, but let's turn it off and let's focus instead of angle 1, because angle 1 has the best KPIs. And we are focusing in the very beginning on the low-hanging fruits because we want fast results. Native is slow in general, but here we need to focus on fast results. Therefore, focusing on one marketing angle and optimize that one marketing angle like crazy. And we do the same with everything. We do the same with the ads, we do the same with the publishers, and this narrow down process takes usually 3 to 4 weeks. Therefore, native is not profitable in the very beginning. Very important to understand here. Native is not a channel for first day results or for fantastic first day results. Native is a channel you develop by yourself. Native is a channel which needs time. I like always to compare native with a big container vessel. When this big container vessel is leaving the harbor, leaving the port, it takes a while until it has 22 knots. But as soon as this ship has 22 knots, it's almost impossible to stop it. And here with native is the same. As soon as you have the momentum, it's very hard to stop it. In the container ship, the same. It needs a few kilometers until it stops. So it's everywhere the same here. As soon as your native channel has momentum, it's very hard to stop it and to break it down. But to be fair, to be honest, it also takes a while until you are there. At this moment that you have enough momentum, that is like a no-brainer thing. And for this, we need usually 3 to 4 weeks, and then we are profitable. And then we can speak about what's next steps, how we can scale it up, and these kind of things. So yeah, this is a quick overview how it looks if you work with us as your agency for native ads. By the way, if you're not a client yet, just check out nativeadvertising.net. You can fill out a quick form, and my colleagues and I will be happy to speak with you about your project. And yeah, let's see, maybe we will apply this very soon to your project.